You're listening to Rochester Trail Riders. Rochester Trail Challenge 2, Oatka Creek Park. I cautiously opened my eyes to look at the alarm clock. 4:20 a.m. Smoke 'em if you got 'em? I just wanted to sleep in. The dogs somehow knew I was conscious, even though I hadn't moved a muscle yet. They start to stir. Looks like I'm getting up. The dogs pottied and fed. I checked to see what the weather was going to be that day. Seriously? Rain? Again? But not until late morning. Yes! I'm awake. There's a challenge to be done. Might as well pick a park and ride. My choice was one I hadn't been to in years, Oatka Creek Park. Oatka Creek is one of Monroe County's public parks. It's 461 acres and is located at 9797 Union Street, Scottsville, New York. It has a little over 5 miles of trails with minimal doubling up on a section. Directions are probably the easiest you could get. Take 390 south from Rochester, north for me, and get off at the Rush exit. Go west on 251 and just keep going. Pay attention to the stop signs and just keep driving forward through every single one of them, even when 251 leaves you off to the right. Just go straight. Never go straight. Always go forward. Wise words from a gay friend of mine. Where was I? Oh yes, just keep going forward. The road eventually turns into the park. Trailer parking is at the top just as you enter on your left. It's a decent size and several smaller trailers can easily spin around and park without trouble. There isn't too much of an opportunity to get the trailer off to a grassy spot, as the lot does dip off quickly down to soccer fields. Definitely need to pick up after your pony with a heavily used shared space. The other bonus that this parking lot does offer is a porta-pot, one that will come in handy after today's ride. Who should I take? I wandered out into the pasture and my mini tuna randomly came up to me. Conveniently, her cart and harness were already in the trailer. Perfect! I've always wanted to drive this park. Tuna and her cart are small and light enough. Should I find myself in a pickle or lost, it'll be easily remedied. I loaded Tuna up into the trailer. Trailering a mini always seemed wasteful to me. It's such a little thing in such a big box. I put the truck in drive and crept down my long driveway. 5:18 a.m. By the time I get to the park, it'll be sunrise. What a way to start a day. When we got there, I had the lot to ourselves and unloaded Tuna and started tacking up. Being early has its perks. And as soon as I thought it, another car pulled in with a dog. The gate to the lower lot wasn't open yet, and he parked and headed on down the road to the trails. We weren't too far behind him, but he was out of sight by the time we got to the trailhead. It had been a while since I've been here, so I made sure I downloaded the map before I left. As memory served, I knew to avoid the orange and yellow trails with a carriage. They lead down to the creek. They're far too narrow of a footpath for a carriage to fit. But if you're riding, they are moderately challenging and offer a chance to dip horse hooves into the creek. There's a yellow gate to mark the start of the trailhead, and off to your left you'll find a walk-around wide enough for a carriage. Today, my goal was to be on a trail that I've never gone before. This could be a good idea, or maybe not. We'll find out. As I made my way down to the main trail, I looked for my marker, white trail to red, and we'll make it up from there. The trails are nicely marked at each intersection with a colored square and an arrow. If you have a map, it makes it very easy to understand where you are and where you want to be. I think the last time that I was here was pre-COVID, so I was running a lot on memory and praying that maintenance had been kept up on. The trails were freshly mowed, and by the look of how many clippings my wheels were collecting, I'd say they were mowed just the day before. It wasn't long before I realized that mowing and down tree maintenance were the only maintenance being done. I was having to duck and weave through overgrowth, stretching its hopeful arms into the center of the trail. If I was having to duck and weave with a miniature horse, I can't imagine the difficulty riding one would be. Sounds like a good opportunity for a volunteer trail clearing event. I made a mental note to talk to the Parks Department about one. At just 4 years old, Tuna was being perfect. She looked around, but marched forward and navigated over roots and rocks and around branches, and then we hit the red trail. This trail is a figure-8 look on a map, and we entered at the bottom of the 8. My plan was to go right, and then figure-8 myself around and back to the white trail, covering the entirety of red. Solid plan. Until I rounded a corner, and there it was. A bridge. A narrow bridge. With railings. Well, there's a clearing off to the left of it. Mud pit. And not the kind of mud pit you want to be in. More like the mud pit from the movie Never-Ending Story. Oh, come on. I want to drive all of this. The other side of the bridge looked newly mowed. And where a mower can get through, so too can a carriage, was my thought. Tuna, she just stood there while I played out a few scenarios in my head. One insane one came to the forefront. The hyperbike she's pulling weighs only 30 pounds. What if I get her up to the bridge, I line drive her over the bridge, and pick up the back of the cart over the railings? It seems like a solid idea. I mean, I'm driving a 4-year-old baby green pony who I've never asked to walk over a bridge before, and I'm by myself, so what could go wrong? I lined her up straight with the bridge and asked her to walk up to it and step her 2 front feet on. Without hesitation, she complied. Seriously? I then asked her to stand as I hoisted the cart up to my shoulders. Tuna, walk on. And her back feet jumped up to match her fronts, and we casually made our way across the bridge like this was a common occurrence. She gingerly jumped down on the other side, and I asked for a whoa and set the cart down. In total disbelief, I did what any sane person would do and dug up my phone for a photo. Good girl, Tuna. Best Pony Award. I got back into the whip seat and we set off again, making our way around the figure-8. I found the correct path that led back to the white trail, one with an abandoned bridge and a nice wide mowed path right off to its side. Mental note, go left, not right, on the red trail next time. We continued along the white trail, which is a mix of trees and meadows. I opted to take a left onto the blue trail when I came upon it at the junction. Shortly down this trail, I got more excited than any normal person should have. Big, huge, black raspberries. And not the small black caps either. These were the size to compete with any top-grade Wegmans berry. Tuna enjoyed her break and I enjoyed my fresh breakfast. Towards the end of the blue trail, I could see Tuna was losing interest. With over 3 kilometers in and a constant change in elevation up and down the hills, was starting to test her stamina. The green trail led straight back home, and the black trail would do the same, but be a little longer route. I pondered these choices as we came upon the intersection. It was then a very confused deer saw us. We'd passed quite a few so far, but this one was perplexed. It really didn't know what to make of a tiny horse, carriage, and human. Tuna stopped, and the standoff began. Who would make the first move? I've been charged by a deer before when they are in this state. Tuna sensed standing still was probably the best course of action. After what felt like light years, the doe finally broke eye contact and decided to bounce her fluffy white tail off the trail. We continued on our path, but I caught the eye of that doe as we passed. Nope. Something tells me this one's gonna be trouble. When we got to the intersection, the doe turned to face us. Uh-oh. Tuna, might be time to pick up the pace here soon. Paying more attention to the deer than Tuna, Tuna chose to go straight, black trail. And I was more focused on what was going on behind us, especially when the doe let out a big blow and kept right on coming. Tuna, blissfully unaware of the goings-on, just happily plodded along. I finally had to yell out to the doe and demand that she stop following us. Tuna? Well, she took this break in silence as a cue to trot on, and I wasn't about to reprimand her for that choice. Bambi's mom did finally decide that we weren't a threat and broke off. Phew. I brought Tuna back down to a walk, and we continued on the Black Trail through the cool woods. With how much rain we've had this year, I was pleasantly surprised on how great the footing was. I only encountered 2 mud spots the entire trip, and both were easily avoided with either a bridge or dry path around it. Upon return to the trailhead, I got out and decided to line drive Tuna back up the hill to the trailer. It seemed only fair to her, as a cool down, for how awesome of a pony she had been. Our round trip was exactly 5 kilometers, or 3.1 miles. I could have easily done more with the trails available, but best to end early with gas in the tank, so to speak, especially with a young horse. Lots of elevation change in the trails, and total climb being 288 meters. We took it at a leisurely stroll with an average pace of 4.4 kilometers an hour the whole trip. Oatka Creek Park, number 2 on my Rochester Trail Challenge series. I forgot how much I like this park. It's nicely groomed, variety of trails from meadows to woods, flat to rolling hills. Riders, orange and yellow trails are more challenging, especially the yellow. This one's more of a footpath with a very large hill climb. Last time I rode it, a tree had fallen midway up the steep hill. Felt like a fox hunt, like cantering up the hill with a log jump halfway up. Just be prepared for anything if you do decide to take it. My rating on this park? Oatka Creek. Parking? 3 out of 4 hooves. Decent sized lot. Maps and signage? 4 out of 4 hooves. Great all around. Trail difficulty? 2 out of 4. Some flat, some hilly. Trail maintenance? Currently 3, but I've seen it at a 4 in the past. That wraps up today's show. Until next time, respect the trail, wear a helmet, and clean up after your horse at the trailer site. Happy trails!